Welcome to Share a Pint, where we tap into the craft beer scene. I'm Jerry Hulla, your host. Today we're talking with Rob Neff from Checkerspot Brewing Company. Thanks for being on the show, Rob.
Cool, thanks, Jerry. Yeah, this is great.
The brewery names comes from the Baltimore Checkerspot, which is the Maryland State butterfly. So tell us how that came about and why you chose that as a brewer's name.
Yeah, Checkerspot. Naming this place was one of the hardest initial things we had to come up with. We had a couple names that sort of didn't fly, didn't stick. And then my wife Judy and I were down in Florida at a Brothers having a beer, and we were reading over like Maryland State stuff. Mm-hmm. Jousting is a state sport, lacrosse, the Black-Eyed Susan is the flower. Mm-hmm. And he read Baltimore Checkerspot, and it's almost like immediately.
Yeah.
We were like, that's it. And we decided to sleep on it. And in the morning we woke up and said, well, we have our name. And that was a huge step, because then you can start to form an identity. So it was over a beer, which I think so many things in life happen over a beer, right?
Yeah, that's great. And then you can see it in the design. I mean, the design's really pretty with how it incorporates ingredients and things from beer. And then, it really looks like a butterfly. It's one of those things where when I realized it, I didn't know it first. And when I realized it, it hit me, and I was like, it's been staring me in the face the whole time.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful butterfly. That's,
Yeah. We find maybe 20% of people sort of heard of the Checkerspot. They know it's the Maryland State butterfly. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people haven't heard of it, and it's a good way to spread the information. And I think it's a catchy name, and it suits us for what we've done here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you talked about the fact that you guys were, you're born and raised here, you've grown up in this area. Mm-hmm. I know that you use a lot of local ingredients in what you do, and that's important for what you do. So I think that the name really helps tie everything in and go, this is where we're grounded and we're proud of it.
I think you're right. Yep. Local ingredients, trying to buy everything local as much as we can where feasible, and just like that sour you're drinking right there. Mm-hmm. All the malt, all the hops, the yeast even is from Maryland. The water.
Awesome.
And all the fruit we get is local Maryland fruit. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty cool supporting the local guys. Yeah, the small businesses.
Simply. You're located right here near M&T Bank Stadium where the Ravens play. Maybe, as they say, a Lamar Jackson pass for the younger generation, but for us, the Johnny Unitas throwaway.
For sure.
And you're also close to Oriole Park at Camden Yards. So talk about choosing this location and how that's helped you.
Yeah, initially we looked at probably 4 or 5 locations around. So with our business model, we had to be in a manufacturing zone, which generally are not in residential areas, of course. When we first saw this place, it has a lot of parking. There was it was an open, when we saw it, there wasn't anything in here. Like this addition we're sitting in right now wasn't here. There wasn't any walls. It was a huge warehouse that our landlord, once we figured out the space and what we were doing with it, we were able to build everything to suit. So that's one of the reasons we liked it over here. We love barks. Favorite, love dogs, love cats. It was sort of near the highways we really liked. Of course, having Camden Yards and Raven Stadium, like, I don't know, quarter of a mile away was part of it, but just being on this side of town and this is a really up and coming entertainment district that we sort of knew about, and we think we've gotten in pretty early over here. So it's just all fell into place, and it's been the perfect location for us.
That's great. I know one of my friends was saying, and kind of reminding me that in this area, Hammerjacks was kind of back in the day.
Yeah.
And so it's not like it hasn't seen life in this area before and it hasn't been supported. So it's nice to know that it's just kind of maybe getting a second birth.
Yeah, I think you're right. And come to say Hammerjacks, they're going to be reopening sort of right over there.
Oh, really?
I don't know, a block and a half away. They're tearing down an old building and building a new Hammerjacks. So it's back.
Wow, that'll be interesting, and then that'll be another tie-in for you. As you were looking at between football and baseball season and business.
Get some shows.
There'll always be people down here for that.
Yeah, we love it. Everything's been going great. A lot of people through the door.
That's great.
Yeah.
You work with your wife, Judy, who is the head brewer, and she's a PhD in microbiology from Johns Hopkins. Tell us how that affects brewing.
Yeah, I think she really understands just the processes, and how does the yeast eat the yeast eat the sugars, and I think she really gets like flavor profiles, and just the brewing is 80% cleaning, and she's, I think, coming from like a science background, you are like in the lab, which she was for a long time, you have to be very clean. There's always, so I think that transfers over and helps. And we have great staff that help clean in the back. Just loves beer, understands the processes that, biological stuff that happens, and we get alcohol in a tasty liquid here.
Yeah, I would have thought that would have been unusual, except for when we talked with Jake at Smoketown, we found out that he was going to school and his degree was in cellular biology and molecular genetics.
Yeah,
and I was like, and now you're brewing craft beer. Like, that's very unique.
Yeah, I think sort of some of the thought process is helpful, just coming from that background. Yeah, I think she's able to.
I think I also read that she had received a scholarship from the Pink Boots Society.
Yep.
So just share a little bit about how her involvement with them has impacted Checkerspot.
Yeah, women-owned brewers, or women-owned breweries, women brewers aren't many. So there's a national society, the Pink Boots Society, and they sort of approached her. She did some brews with them, took some classes, and was accepted in. And it's been sort of a deep, not club, but they do different events, different brews around, and when she can make them, she'll go down to them. Like, they just did one at Denizens, I think about a month ago, which Pink Boots was involved in. It was on, I think it's gonna be called Suffragette Stout. And there were women from all the breweries in Maryland, essentially, that went down there and brewed a beer. Yeah, and cool thing, they send her some brewery boots, some pink boots, and it's just a neat thing for that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I know that Julie had talked about that when we talked with her then at Denizens, about the fact that they're women and minority owned and the importance of that. I knew they were very active in that. Yeah. Ben talked about that. And then when we were at Milk House, Sarah, who's now the new president of the Baltimore Brewers Association, she talked about the fact that February coming up, they were working on a beer. Will you guys participate in the Pink Boots Collaboration Brew Day that's on Sunday, March 8th, the same day as International Women's Day?
I'd have to check the brewer schedule. I think we would probably do that, if that's not on the schedule already,
Okay, that's great. It's good that, like I said, I'm finding more and more women in this area that are involved in brewing, and like you said, that's a great thing to see that kind of growing and being supported.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of room for that.
Yeah. Well, you also have Steve Marsh with you. He was very well known for starting the cask program while he was at Heavy Seas. Share with us what his experiences brought to Checkerspot, and then tell our listeners a little bit more about cask beer.
Yeah, Steve Marsh is our partner, our friend. He brings a lot of experience from his Heavy Seas days. He worked there, brewed there, started the cask program at Heavy Seas, which is now a huge thing. Cask beer, for your viewers that might not know, it's how beer was carbonated before we had forced carbonation in modern brewing. Brewers in the 1800s would put new beer in a vessel called a cask, and then you would add a little bit more yeast and you would plug it up and just let it sit there, and that yeast would eat some residual sugars and sort of low carbonate it. Cask beer generally isn't as carbonated as regular beer, I guess you could say. It's usually served a little bit warmer than a cold beer, but you can do, each cask of beer is its own thing, because you can add the base beer and you can also add like extra hops, or usually Steve uses honey for his like priming sugar that the yeast then continues to eat. You can put all kinds of stuff in there. I think he made, not a fruit roll-up, but like he took a bunch of fruit, dried it out, and pressed it, and made it real thin, and put some of that in there, and it was a neat little sort of thing for the customer. But yeah, Steve brings a lot of experience in the brewery. He's a great guy. He runs our kitchen. He comes up with all of our catering items. He does the most amazing jerky you'll ever eat. Smoked salmon. We do all kinds of dips. On the weekends, we cater our own stuff, and he'll do He's done a smoked pig before. We have a big smoker out there. He did one of those for our anniversary party last year. Just very knowledgeable in the kitchen, and overall just a great guy. Yeah, really cool guy.
That's awesome. And I noticed you have a really nice event space. So you were talking about doing events and things here. So you have a lot more space than maybe some other places will be to separate events and things. Maybe talk about some of the things that you do up there. And
yeah, that's great. Upstairs we have probably another 1,000 square feet, maybe more. And we use that for more, it's not always open, but there's a full bar up there. And say like the Ravens game, when it was wall to wall in here, we would have upstairs open with 2 bartenders and just be slinging beers. We use that space for sometimes overflow when we're really busy on, say, like a Saturday. But we also offer it as an event space. We do some catering. You can have a bartender. We've had baby showers up there. We've had wedding reception, or like a rehearsal dinner. A lot of birthday parties. Like people will come in for their 40th, or somebody will bring their 1-year-old and have a 1-year-old birthday party up there. It's, I think, more for the parents.
Start
right?
them young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just like a nice space that's available, and we're lucky to have it as far as the overflow and just to rent it out more. Like we had a huge party there on Saturday night with, I think, 150 people up there, and they brought in some catering and 2 bartenders and drank some beer, and yeah, so it's more, overflow or just extra events and places to go to stretch out. If I have maybe some office work to do, it's not always quiet up there, but I can go find some quiet up there and read or do whatever I need to do in my day. Sort of nice. Yeah, just like a little getaway.
That's great. And given the location we were talking about earlier, I mean, that's got to really help to be close to some of these major sporting events. And then, like you said, when Hammerjacks opens, the entertainment and all, for you to be able to have more people coming in for events that wouldn't necessarily think that they could be right here in the heat of all the action and kind of get the best of both worlds, what they came down for, and then the hidden gem they didn't know about, Checkerspot.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, Jerry, on that. We get, especially the Ravens games, we get a lot of new fans, people that didn't, and it's sort of snowballed versus last year. We did great last year, and this year was just, that playoff game was, I think, our biggest day ever in here.
Yeah.
I mean, people were spilling out the door, down the ramp, outside. We had a jockey box set up, and we're serving beer, and it was great. Wish we would have had one more.
Exactly, maybe
what
a couple
a season,
more.
though. Yeah. We'll just get to it next year, and we're looking forward to the Orioles. Opening day last year was crazy, and even through the year, as the Orioles weren't that good, we still got fans in before the game. 10 fans, 20 fans, wearing the orange, and
but they're diehards. I mean, I'm an Oriole fan, tried and true. My dad, got me into that. That was always his team, and so regardless of how we struggle or what happens, I'm always going to be there for the Orioles. So I understand, and everybody feels like they have a fan base like that. But I really do feel like that Baltimore is connected and invested enough in the Orioles that nobody likes to have the season like we had last year.
Yeah.
But people are still going to come out this year and say it's a new year, it's a new season.
Stay positive, and I think you're right. The Baltimore fan is diehard, and there's been greatness in the past, and it'll come again.
Absolutely.
And not to mention Camden Yards is so beautiful. Anyway.
Absolutely.
Last year we made it to a few games. This year I think it was one, but as we're being here a couple more years, hopefully we'll have some more time and just catch more games. I really enjoy a day game.
Absolutely.
Those are always fun, but only a couple of those a year. But
yeah,
and with Hammerjacks coming, it's...
Have you heard a timeline on that, or?
No, the building has a demo sign on it, like demolition is going to happen.
Okay.
So it's
a
probably 6 months, a year off, I bet, until they open, but it's coming.
Gotcha.
I can't wait for that
That's
either.
great. Bring back some of the nostalgia.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, you talked earlier about the importance of using local ingredients and Steve's role and his connections, and then what he does for you in the kitchen. I noticed that Steve's gotten a lot of local ingredients from some of our past guests, like Manor Hill and Milk House Brewery. So maybe talk a little bit more about how his contacts like that, and just other contacts in general that he brought with you, benefited Checkerspot.
Yeah. So Steve's been in the scene a long time, and he's worked with a lot of breweries in Maryland, like setting up their breweries, and he's really good at finding like local ingredients. Like he's the fruit master, and he knows all the the seasons and everything. He knows the farms around, and he can work with other breweries who might not have his expertise to, he can provide the fruit essentially, like the go get it, deliver whole fruit, or we have a big press in the back and we can process the fruit, and we're just set up well to do that, and it's a good connection with everybody because we can just provide stuff all year round, really. Yeah, he just knows his stuff. It's really cool. And every time he brings in a load of fruit, it's always take a little bit home, eat it through the week. It's really cool, and the flavors really come through. We don't do a lot of fruited beers, but like our sour always has fruit in it, so it's always some combination of stuff that he's gotten over the year. A lot of times we'll get like a pretty big amount of fruit and bring it in. We'll process it. We get the juice. So all of our stuff is just juice, never extract.
Okay.
And we got tons of freezers, and we freeze it, and we can use it sort of in the off season, or we can sell it to other breweries who might be looking for another, 5 gallons of peach juice or something for their beer.
Yeah.
So we really have that. It's amazing the amount of fruit that comes through here and gets processed. Sometimes Steve will bring in like his mother-in-law and some of his neighbors to process the fruit, because you can't just throw it into the press. You have to, like peaches, you have to get the pit out, and sometimes we take the skin off. And I don't know if we'll talk about the Pawpaw fruit, but that's a very intensive preparation to get it, just the pulp, just to use that to get the juice. It's a lot of hours go into that.
Yeah, and that was a great segue, because I was thinking about that. I was like, wait, I know that you guys did a collab with Flying Dog, because we had talked about with Keith at Wardaka recently, and he spent some time there, and so the Pawpaw was the one I remembered, and such an unusual fruit to begin with, and kind of grown in the wild from what I understand. So
it's sort of native to this region, really, a tropical fruit, native to Maryland and east of the Mississippi, and you can find them growing wild. It's like a tree that are around. I think the people that know where they are guard the secret. You can find them along the highway even.
Yeah.
I know Steve has stopped by several spots on the highway and picks pawpaws. And then there is an orchard, a pawpaw orchard, that we get a lot from each year.
Oh, okay.
'Cause it's a really small window for when they're ripe and available.
Yeah. Well, like you said, the ability to freeze and hold those fruits for another time is something that not everybody really has the ability to do. I know that Sarah talked about, at Milk House, the fact that they kind of have to plan a year out when they're thinking about doing something with the fruits, because they're like, we're going to get fruit when we're not necessarily going to make that beer, or that would be seasonal for that beer.
Yep, and freezer space is very valuable. I don't know if you want to check our freezers out after, but they're packed.
Wow.
All the hops and fruit and everything else. A lot of food in there too.
Yeah, that's great. Well, where can people find you online? Facebook, Instagram, Twitter?
Yeah, all that stuff. The main one, I guess, is Facebook. If you ever need to contact us, we have a landline, but we're pretty efficient with Facebook Messenger. We do Instagram. We have a website, checkerspotbrewing.com, and that gives a little more. Most of our stuff is Facebook. Like, we set up events. You always know what's coming up. We do a lot of different stuff. And the website it's out there. Get some hits on that, a lot of calls from that. We don't have as much Twitter presence yet. I think that's on the horizon, to try to get more into that with our social media. But or come in and talk to our bartenders. Say hey to me, say hey to Judy, say hey to Steve. We'll tell you what's up.
That's one of the things I did notice, is that again, you guys are you have very much presence forward. See you behind the bar. We'll see, so Steve will be back there. I mean, there are people there. They're just.
We're definitely here a lot, and love the place. It's a lot of work in this place, and it's just fun to be here. Sometimes I get to even have a couple beers at the bar. It's pretty neat, and not have to go change a keg, which we'll always do. But it's just a nice thing. We get a varied crowd in here, young, old, all everywhere in between. We get dogs. It's a lot of fun. And I always like to say I can't drink all the beer myself, so I need help from my friends.
That's great. Well, we'll put your social media information on our show notes and on our website at sharepintpodcast.com. We've learned about the brewery. Let's get to know you a little bit better, Rob. Tell us a little bit more about your role here at Checkerspot.
My role, I guess I would be the builder. I build stuff. Built the bar. My dad and I and Steve and Judy did a lot of stuff in here. Like we made all the lights, we made the tables, the bar itself. Just all the little details everywhere. I sort of come from a building background. I had a house rehabbing company before this for like 10 years, doing row houses in Baltimore. Full guts. I'm also head of sales and distribution. So if you see us out and about, we distribute our beer in sixtels and kegs to bars around Baltimore. We have some in Pasadena, a couple in Bel Air, a few in Columbia, but sort of Baltimore-centric. And I spend a lot of my week talking or calling people, stopping in the bars and restaurants, giving our information out, taking orders. And I'm the guy lugging the kegs. Yep. So usually Thursdays, for example, is a big delivery day. I'll back my truck up to the loading dock and I'll take 5, 6, 7 barrels of beer around each Thursday to all of our accounts. It's a lot of fun. I like meeting bar owners, and generally bar people are really nice, and the beer sells itself. It's great beer.
Absolutely.
Some like sales meetings, I'll take samples and we'll talk, but it's now that we've been open maybe a year and a half, people know who we are. They know we get calls where people want the beer, or when I go to a new place, if I cold call them, they know who we are, and a lot of times it ends up, I'll sell them beer in a week or two, or a month or 2 months later, they'll buy something. So
that's great.
Just trying to get more presence out there and be on tap as many places as we can.
That's great.
Yeah.
How did you get in the craft beer industry?
Well, I've always liked craft beer. I've always been a beer guy. Probably because of Judy, I would say, so she started homebrewing at our house 12 or 13 years ago. And when we finished our basement, we put a brewery in down there. And I just got more and more into just beer, really. Had 6 or 7 taps down there, a lot of neighbors coming over and having parties and such. And we sort of decided to do this 3 or 4 years ago, and that's just sort of jumped in. I wasn't necessarily in the industry, just sort of, we went to bars and we knew people, and we always loved going to breweries everywhere we travel, and that was always a thing. But just because we decided, let's do it, and we jumped in. So I would say that's the sort of fell into it, I guess. Yeah. That's a good question. I was ready for a change. That's another thing. I love doing the houses, but it just, the timing was right for us. Everything worked out great. I mean, we found Steve, and it's just a good partnership. We all are very strong at what we do, and it's going great. I don't know. I guess I fell into it would be the answer.
That'd be great. Well, you kind of touched on it a little bit, so it's a good segue. Talk about maybe what some of your biggest challenges have been.
Yeah, I guess opening the place was ridiculously stressful, and just all of opening any business for sure, but just a lot of, I won't get into too many details, but just roadblocks. Just kept delay. We opened probably a year late. I don't think that's not an unusual thing for breweries and tap rooms, I guess, to open later than planned, but just delays. Most of our equipment's been working great. There's been a couple hiccups with that. Frustrations is we just want to brew more, so I want to sell more. Can only do so much, Eventually I think we're going to get maybe some salespeople out there, or just keep growing the business as we're sort of in the growth phase now. Brewing more beer every month. It feels like we're making more barrels. I would say that was the hardest thing, is the stress of opening this place. It gave me a lot of gray hairs. I had some before, but I look back at pictures from that day, and it just was like deer in the headlights. I remember it very fondly, but it was a blur. That first couple months we were here, I don't know, you get here at 10, say we open at 12 and we close at 12. We were here 9 or 10 in the morning till close. That's a long day.
Long days,
and
yeah.
we had some mechanical problems in the beginning that we figured out. There were some draft issues that we figured out. And you don't know until you like turn it on, I guess, you know.
Right.
But yeah, it's been going great. Everything's falling into place. We're just expanding, and there's not as much frustrating stuff these days, you know. Everything breaks, I guess that's the other thing.
Of course.
Like chairs, or there's always something to fix. But,
Right.
yeah.
Well, tell me, how did you stay committed during some of those difficult times?
Just having good partners, and like my dad was here a lot, so he helped me with keeping a level head and trying to not stress out. We had a lot of help from our families that came down, and just emotional support. You know, labor, there was just so much. Like a bunch of our friends would come in and we'd have like a paint day. So we'd have like 20 people here just painting or cleaning. Yeah, it was a blur, you know.
Yeah.
Sort of hard to say, but it's been going great. We're cruising along.
Yeah. Well, would you say then that that support from friends and family and things would be maybe one of the biggest things that contributed to your success, or?
I would say certainly, yeah. Just a lot of support, a lot of help getting the place open, really. And even a year and a half before we opened, we did a lot of collaboration brews with, I think we did 8 or 9 of them with, I think, Dewclaw, Flying Dog, Key, Waverly, to name a few. And I think that helped endear us, Checkerspot, and people sort of started knowing who we were. And like Steve and Judy knew a lot of people in the scene anyway, but it really, people just knew who we were. And when we would have these beer releases, it's just more and more momentum. So when we actually did open, it was packed. We were getting great crowds. Yeah,
it's a great way to open.
Yeah, for sure. The main thing is the beer is great.
Absolutely.
And we have a lot of styles, so it's something for everybody, I think.
Yeah, sure. Well, again, remind people where we can find you online.
Yeah, with that checkerspotbrewing.com. We're very active on Facebook. If you need to get a hold of us, we do have a landline, but like I was mentioning, send us a message. We can generally get back in a couple hours with any questions, like room fees upstairs. If people want to, we even have space in the back that you can rent, or a lot of times we'll just set up a table and you can have your friends over and have some beer in a brewery space, you know?
Yeah.
We definitely have Instagram presence, and like I said, come on in and see us. We have different events coming up, and we have an amazing staff that understands the beer, and I feel like everyone that works here is just super excited and, you know, knows their stuff. So yeah, just online or come in. I would say the first thing to come visit us and see what we got going on.
Sounds good. Well, Rob, I want to thank you for your time and for sharing a pint with me.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. This was great.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Share a Pint is released bi-weekly on Friday mornings and can be found at shareapintpodcast.com. Follow us on Twitter at share_pint. Show notes for this episode are available at shareapintpodcast.com. Music for the show, Groundwork, provided by Kevin MacLeod, and can be found online at incompetech.com. Share a Pint is made possible by help from the Community Media Center of Carroll County. Associated with the craft beer industry and have an interesting story you'd like to share on a future episode? Let us know. We'd love to hear from you. You can reach us at shareapintpodcast.com or email us at jerry@shareapintpodcast.com. Until the next time we share a pint, I'm Jerry Hulla. Prost.